The Unfiltered Human on the Fringe episode 12, The Alchemist's Heart Turning Pain into Power. You're listening to The Unfiltered Human on the Fringe, a space where raw honesty meets uncomfortable truths. We don't claim to have all the answers, but we ask the questions most people avoid. I'm James Miller, and in this 12th episode of our series and second on integration and healing, we're diving into something elemental, how pain transforms us. This episode explores the art of emotional alchemy, the process of turning life's deepest wounds into gold. It's a journey we don't often choose, but one that reshapes us from the inside out. Whether it's heartbreak, loss, shame, or betrayal, our most painful experiences hold within them the potential for clarity, strength, and compassion if we're willing to face them. In this episode, we'll explore how pain invites transformation and what happens when we resist it, the stories we tell ourselves about suffering and how they shape identity, the process of moving from survival to meaning-making. What does it mean to transmute emotional weight into wisdom? This one is for anyone who's been broken and is wondering how to make something beautiful from the pieces. Let's begin. The performance of protection, becoming who we had to be theme, emotional safety through persona. We don't just show up in love as ourselves, we show up as the version of ourselves we think is acceptable enough to be loved. These versions are rehearsed over time, the funny one, the chill one, the strong one, the self-sacrificing one. They're not inherently false, but when they become armor, they begin to cost us authenticity. In this part, we explore how early life experiences teach us to perform in relationships, and what it feels like to meet love from a script rather than a true self. Attributes, identity, self-protection, internalized beliefs. This section invites an honest look at the origin of our emotional strategies. We begin unpacking why certain protective personas formed, how they shaped our beliefs about connection, and how we might begin the process of softening those masks. This is about reclaiming the self beneath the role. The early years, most of us didn't learn love as a safe space. We learned it as a series of negotiations. Maybe we had to be quiet to avoid punishment. Maybe we had to be helpful to be noticed. Maybe we had to excel to feel worthy. Whatever the context, we adapted quickly, cleverly, and often unconsciously, and those adaptations solidified into identity. These adaptations are what psychologists call protective strategies. They're the subconscious ways we learn to self-soothe, avoid rejection, or manage our place in a relationship. But when these strategies become fixed, they create disconnection. We're present, but not fully. We're giving, but with resentment. We're open, but only to a point. We begin to perform love instead of embodying it. And here's the trap. When we are loved while performing, the love feels conditional. We think they love the version of me I've curated, not the real me. And so intimacy becomes exhausting, identity becomes fragmented, and deep down, we fear that if we stop performing, we'll be abandoned. The work of healing begins by asking, who did I learn to become and why? Personal reflection. Looking back, I can see clearly how much of my emotional life was shaped around performance. I was the strong one, the resilient one, the one who had it together. Even when things were falling apart internally, I'd still show up as grounded, self-assured, the one people came to for advice, never the one who asked for help. But underneath that role, I was exhausted. I wasn't just protecting myself from others. I was protecting others from my truth. I didn't want to be seen as messy, emotional, or overwhelmed. Somewhere along the line, I learned that showing those parts would cost me connection. When I entered relationships, especially in the past, I found myself doing emotional calculations constantly. Is this too much to say? Should I just let this go? Will they see me differently if I show this part? I thought this was maturity, but it was fear in disguise. Fear of being too much, fear of being left. Over time, I saw how these internal scripts stopped me from truly receiving love. People would say they cared, but I couldn't feel it because I was still holding the belief that I needed to earn it. Now I'm learning to lay those roles down, to speak honestly, to not apologize for my needs, and to trust that the right people won't run from my rawness. They'll recognize it because they've met their own. Psychological insight, internal family systems, and the manager role in internal family systems. IFS, a therapeutic model developed by Richard Schwartz, There's a concept called the manager. This is the part of us that organizes our emotional world by maintaining control and avoiding vulnerability. It's the voice that says, don't cry, stay strong, or be the one who fixes everything. It's safer that way. Managers are protective parts that often develop in childhood to prevent pain, shame, or rejection. They operate based on early emotional logic. If I keep things under control, I won't get hurt. Over time, these roles become so dominant that we forget they're just parts of us, not the whole self. The trouble arises when these managers take over our adult relationships. They keep us guarded. We become overly responsible, hypervigilant, emotionally unavailable, or over-functioning. And while we may feel competent and self-contained, we also feel profoundly alone. Reclaiming authenticity means thanking the manager for its service and gently letting it rest. It means trusting that we no longer need to perform safety, we can live it. Insight prompt. Who did you learn to become to feel emotionally safe growing up? What behaviors do you now see as emotional performance in your adult relationships? What would it mean to lay that script down? Theory and action prompt. Try this practice. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Place one hand on your heart and one on your solar plexus. Ask yourself, what part of me steps forward in love and what part hides? Visualize that part gently stepping back and your true self, soft-centered, honest, stepping forward. Journal what it feels like to imagine being loved without needing to perform. The myth of earning love, when connection becomes a test theme. Conditional love and emotional worthiness from childhood. Many of us absorb the belief that love must be earned through obedience, achievement, emotional labor, or self-sacrifice. This section examines the origins of conditional love and its manifestation in adult relationships. We ask, when did love become a reward instead of a right? And what does it cost us to keep proving we're worthy? Attributes: conditionality, fear of rejection, emotional worthiness, self-worth, self-sacrifice. This segment unpacks the emotional narratives that link love to performance. We examine how these beliefs form, how they manifest in moments of self-doubt or disconnection, and how to challenge the notion that love must always be earned. Unconditional love isn't meant to be a transaction, but for many of us that's exactly what it became. Early on, we internalized messages that love must be earned. Maybe it was through being quiet and compliant, or maybe we had to shine, succeed, and never cause trouble. For others, it was about caretaking, keeping the peace, reading the room, or tending to the needs of others before our own. Over time, we confused emotional labor with emotional worth. These patterns don't dissolve just because we grow older. In adult relationships, we may still feel the pressure to deserve love, to prove we're enough, to perform emotional excellence, to suppress our needs until they become palatable. We may apologize for being too much, or silently resent how little we're allowed to be. This idea that love must be earned becomes a trap. It creates a constant low-grade anxiety. Am I doing enough? Saying the right thing? Being lovable right now? True love doesn't live in those calculations. It's not something we win, it's something we allow. But to allow it, we must confront the hidden belief that we are not already enough. Personal reflection. This one hits deeper than I expected. For most of my life, I thought I was good, loving, and I thought I was whole. I showed up, gave generously, anticipated needs, and stayed calm under pressure. But when I looked at what I was doing, I saw it. I was trying to earn love, not out of desperation, but out of programming. Somewhere along the line, I learned that being easy to love meant being low maintenance, high performing, endlessly reliable, and not asking. I didn't believe love would stay if I became inconvenient. In relationships, I'd monitor myself constantly. I'd downplay my needs. I'd rationalize my partner's emotional unavailability or poor communication as something I could fix. I thought if I could just be better, more patient, more understanding, then I'd finally earn the love I was wanting to share and experience through an authentic connection. But it never worked. The more I gave, the more invisible I felt. I was being emotionally fluent in a language the other person had never learned. And instead of seeing that, I blamed myself. Realizing this was like waking up in the middle of a play I didn't audition for. I had spent years performing worthiness and calling it love. Now, I'm learning something slower. Love that doesn't need an invoice. Intimacy that doesn't demand I shrink to fit. And slowly, I'm meeting myself not as someone who must earn love, but someone who is already enough to receive it. Psychological insight. Attachment theory and conditional love scripts attachment theory offers a lens through which we can understand the roots of conditional love. Developed by John Bowlby and later expanded by Mary Ainsworth, the theory suggests that our early relationships form attachment styles, patterns we carry into adult intimacy. For those with anxious attachment, love often feels precarious. These individuals may overfunction emotionally, always seeking reassurance, fearing abandonment, and believing love must be constantly maintained. Avoidant types, on the other hand, may have learned that connection feels unsafe or burdensome, and thus withdraw or underfunction emotionally. Both styles, though opposite, share a common wound: the belief that love is not safe to trust. When love feels conditional in childhood, we internalize the idea that we must earn safety through behavior. We become hyper-attuned to others' moods, suppress our discomfort, and confuse love with compliance. In adulthood, this plays out in codependent tendencies, people-pleasing, perfectionism, or emotional burnout. The healing begins with recognizing that love is not something we achieve through performance. It's something we learn to receive by being real, present, and self-honoring. Insight prompt: reflect on the beliefs you carry about love and worthiness. When did you first feel like love had to be earned? What behaviors do you now recognize as efforts to prove your value in relationships? What would it feel like to be loved without doing anything to earn it? Theory in action prompt. Practice unconditional mirror journaling exercise. Write yourself a letter from the perspective of someone who loves you without condition. This could be your future self, a compassionate friend, or even a fictional character. Let this voice speak to all the parts of you that have felt they needed to do more to be loved. No fixing, no judgment, just honest, loving acceptance. And reflect: how did it feel to receive those words? What part of you struggled to believe them? What part softened? The turning point: choosing growth over bitterness theme. Reclaiming power through meaning making. When life breaks us open, we face a choice: shrink into bitterness or step into growth. Pain doesn't automatically evolve us, it invites us to respond. The turning point comes not when we escape suffering, but when we meet it with honest curiosity. What is this trying to reveal in me? Attributes: resilience, meaning making, personal choice. This part explores the alchemical shift that occurs when we stop resisting pain and start mining it for truth. It's not about bypassing grief, but about letting suffering become a teacher. We look at how meaning-making turns wounds into wisdom, and how small, quiet choices in hard moments shape our transformation. Emotions and feelings. When we're in pain, the world feels split before and after. There's the life we expected, and the one we're suddenly left with. That rupture can leave us cold, cynical, and distrustful, or it can wake something up inside us. The turning point isn't about denying how bad it was. It's not bypassing grief or justifying harm. It's a slow, conscious movement toward meaning, toward asking, now that this has happened, who am I becoming? Emotional alchemy begins the moment we choose not to let pain define us, but to let it refine us. This choice isn't clean or easy. It often arrives after numbness, rage, bargaining, or collapse. But once it arrives, it changes everything. We stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what is this trying to wake up in me? That's the heart of transformation. Personal reflection. I remember a point in my life where everything collapsed. A relationship, a project, my health. It felt like life was closing in from every direction. For months, I was just surviving. There was no poetic clarity, no deeper insight, just raw survival. But then something shifted. I stopped trying to rebuild what had been lost, and I started listening to what was being revealed. I realized I had spent so much time trying to avoid pain that I never let it teach me. That pain gave me my voice. It gave me the lens through which I now see the world. It didn't make me bitter. It burned away the parts of me that weren't real. I wouldn't wish that time on anyone, but I wouldn't undo it either, because from the rubble of what broke, I found the bones of something honest. And slowly, I started to build a life that felt like mine. Psychological insight, post-traumatic growth, PTG. While trauma is often associated with long-term damage, there's also research that shows it can catalyze profound transformation. This is called post-traumatic growth, PTG, a theory developed by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun. PTG isn't about being positive after pain. It's about deep internal shifts in how we see ourselves, others, and the world. People who experience PTG often report a stronger sense of self, greater appreciation for life, deeper relationships, clearer values, a renewed sense of purpose. Growth hasn't erased the trauma, but it offers a new container for it, one where meaning can exist alongside pain. Insight prompt. What moment in your life felt like a turning point, even if it didn't feel like one at the time? How did you respond to that pain? What might it look like to let pain shape you, but not harden you? Theory and action prompt. Practice. Pain to purpose timeline. Create a timeline of your life, marking 3-5 painful moments. Beside each one, ask, what did this moment try to teach me? Who did I become because of it? What truth did I learn that I still carry? Reflect on patterns. Are there values or insights that emerged from those moments that guide your life today? Hold in the wound, finding strength in sensitivity theme. Compassion as a byproduct of pain. When we allow ourselves to feel deeply, pain doesn't just break us, it opens us. Many of the most compassionate people you'll meet are those who've suffered, who've touched despair and returned with gentleness instead of cruelty. Sensitivity, once feared, becomes a portal to connection, presence, and empathy. Attributes: empathy, vulnerability, emotional attunement. This section explores how emotional pain, when integrated, expands our capacity to hold space for others. We examine how trauma can harden us or soften us, and what it takes to remain open without losing our center. The very wounds we tried to hide often become the source of our deepest relational strength. Determined to move forward. There's a kind of strength that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't look like confidence or power. It looks like presence, like someone who can sit with pain, theirs or yours, without flinching. The people who've suffered often carry this kind of depth, not because pain made them better, but because they let it open them instead of closing them down. We live in a culture that praises emotional independence, control, and composure. But the true alchemists are those who let pain carve them into more human beings, not harder ones. When we integrate our suffering, we become safer people. We don't fix, we don't judge, we don't run. We listen. And that is rare. Personal reflection. I used to think sensitivity was a liability. That made me fragile. But now I see it as my compass. Every moment that broke me gave me a new way to connect, not just with others, but with myself. I don't need to pretend I understand everyone's pain. I just need to remember my own. I've sat across from people who've told me stories of grief, rage, and heartbreak, and I've seen how much healing can happen just by saying, I see you. I've been there too. We don't need to be healed to be helpful. We just need to be honest and willing to stay present when it hurts. That's the real gold. Psychological insight, empathy, mirror neurons, and interpersonal healing. From a neuroscience perspective, empathy is wired into us. Mirror neurons are specialized brain cells that activate both when we act and when we observe someone else doing it. This allows us to feel what others feel, a key part of connection and compassion. But trauma can disrupt this. When we're stuck in survival mode, our capacity for empathy narrows. Healing helps reawaken this system. As we integrate our pain, our brains become more available to co-regulate with others, creating safety and emotional resonance. This is why your pain, once integrated, becomes medicine, not just for you, but for those around you. Insight prompt. Has your suffering made you more compassionate toward yourself or others? What do you now understand about pain that you couldn't have understood without living it? Who in your life feels safer because of what you've lived through? Theory in action prompt. Practice. The empathy letter. Think of someone in your life who is currently struggling, or someone who once hurt you because they were struggling. Write them a letter. You don't need to send it. From a place of empathy. What do you see now that you didn't then? What would you say if your goal wasn't to fix or blame, but to understand? The Alchemist's Heart. Living with open hands theme. Integration and embodied wisdom. Emotional alchemy isn't about escaping pain. It's about weaving it into who we are. Wholeness doesn't mean perfection. It means living honestly with all parts present. When we stop performing healing and start living from it, we begin to embody the wisdom that comes only from walking through the fire. Attributes: wholeness, presence, self-compassion. This final section brings the journey full circle, not to closure, but to continuity. We explore what it means to live with an open heart, even when it's been hurt, and how to carry forward the insights forged in suffering. Integration is the quiet power of knowing who you are, scars and all. Emotional liberation transformation isn't a destination. It's a posture, a way of moving through the world that says, I have met myself in the fire, and I'm still here. You don't need to turn every wound into a breakthrough. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is sit with what hurts without trying to fix it, to hold yourself with softness and offer the same to others. Emotional alchemy is not a rejection of pain, but a reorientation to it. You learn to trust that even the darkest moments are part of the material. They don't define your story, but they shape its depth. Living with an alchemist's heart means loving fully, grieving honestly, and showing up without the armor. Not because it's safe, but because it's real. Personal reflection. I used to think healing would mean I'd never hurt again, that I'd get strong enough, wise enough, enlightened enough to avoid pain entirely. But that's not how life works. Pain still comes. The difference is I'm not afraid of it anymore. I've lived through the worst days of my life and found meaning on the other side. I've learned to see beauty in places I once only saw damage. And I've realized that my heart doesn't need protection, it needs presence. That's the alchemist's gift. Not escaping the fire, but learning to walk through it with your eyes open. Psychological insight. Integration as wholeness, Jungian shadow, and self-actualization. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the process of integrating all parts of the self, including the shadow. This isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole. Healing doesn't erase pain. It makes room for it in your story. The parts you once hid or rejected become threads in the tapestry of your selfhood. This is what self-actualization means. Not rising above your pain, but weaving it into your identity with love and maturity. Wholeness is the goal, not flawlessness. Insight prompt. What part of your pain have you begun to integrate, not escape? What have you learned from suffering that you carry as embodied wisdom? What would it look like to live from an alchemist's heart right now? Theory and action prompt. Practice. The open hands meditation. Sit quietly. Place your hands in your lap, palms up. Breathe slowly. Imagine your past, the joy, the grief, the mistakes, resting gently in your hands. Now repeat quietly to yourself, I do not need to fix the past. I only need to hold it. I trust what I've survived. I am whole even with what I carry. Let your breath anchor you in that truth. Feeling the fire-releasing pain that never had a witness theme. Emotional suppression and the need to be seen unprocessed pain doesn't just disappear. It buries itself in the body, the breath, the posture of how we live. Many of us carry wounds that were never witnessed, validated, or held by another. We learn to survive without being seen. But healing begins when we give voice to what we silenced and offer presence to what we buried. Attributes: suppression, somatic memory, emotional expression. This section explores the necessity of giving form to the formless, allowing anger, grief, and sorrow to surface without judgment. We look at how the body stores unexpressed emotion, how silence breeds shame, and how reclaiming voice and movement can release us from patterns of quiet suffering. The wordless emotions. There's a particular kind of pain that has never had language. It lived in our bodies, our nervous systems, our breath. Not because we didn't feel it, but because there was no one safe enough to feel it with. So we swallowed it, pushed it down, smiled over it. Some of us became funny, others became stoic. Some became caretakers, always tending to others to avoid feeling the ache inside ourselves. That ache didn't go away, it just hid or hides. But here's the truth: what we repress, we carry. And over time, what we carry silently becomes a script for how we show up in the world. To feel the fire, to finally name and release what was held too long in silence, is not weakness. It's sacred rebellion, not for attention, not for drama, but because the body deserves relief. The soul deserves a witness, and the child we once were deserves to be heard. Personal reflection. There are things I never said because I didn't think anyone could hold them, not even me. I carried a lot of frustrations, anger, and at times rage that I wasn't allowed to show. Grief I had no words for. I got good at being calm, composed, and understanding. But inside I was burning, and I didn't know where to put that fire. So I tried to turn it into productivity, into wisdom, into something useful. But pain doesn't transform through denial. It transforms through presence. And for me, it started when I finally let myself feel, not just in my mind, but in my body. I cried in places I hadn't cried before. I screamed into pillows. I shook during meditations. And slowly, I felt lighter. Not because it all vanished, but because it had finally been acknowledged. The body keeps the score, but it also keeps the story. And every time we allow emotion to move through us, raw, real, unfiltered, we rewrite a part of that story. Psychological insight, somatic experiencing, and the body as an archive. Peter Levine's work in somatic experiencing shows how trauma lives in the body, not just the mind. When a painful event occurs and we're unable to process or express it, our nervous system stores that charge. Over time, this leads to chronic tension, anxiety, emotional disconnection, or numbness. The key to releasing this stored energy isn't through thinking or talking it out loud, it's through safe, gradual embodiment. Allowing the body to tremble, breathe, weep, or rage in a supported way activates the parasympathetic nervous system and begins the process of regulation. This is why emotional expression isn't dramatic, it's medicinal. Insight prompt. What pain have you never spoken out loud, not even to yourself? What emotions feel the most unsafe for you to express? What would it feel like to let your body lead instead of your mind, just for a moment? Theory in action prompt. Practice. The soundless scream. Find a private, quiet space. Take a few deep breaths, grounding yourself. Then silently, without voice, open your mouth wide and scream with everything you've got. Let your body contract, tremble, release. This isn't about sound. It's about giving your system permission to express what's been held in. Afterwards, place your hands on your chest and say aloud, I hear you now. You're allowed to feel. Journal whatever came up. Of After the Fire, showing up without the armor theme. Vulnerability, intimacy, and rebuilding trust. When you've been hurt, love becomes risky. Trust feels earned, not offered. But the real turning point in alchemy is not just transforming pain. It's letting love back in after you've learned how to live without it. Vulnerability becomes the bridge between survival and connection. Attributes: trust, intimacy, emotional risk. This section explores what it means to show up after heartbreak, not as a performance, but as a whole self. We look at the fears that linger even after healing, how to navigate openness without self-abandonment, and what it means to risk being seen again, this time without the mask. To allow once more after pain, love doesn't feel simple anymore. It feels dangerous. You've rebuilt yourself. You've found calm. You've reclaimed parts of you that were buried. And now here comes someone or something knocking at the door of your heart again. And suddenly all your wisdom goes quiet. Can I trust this? Will I lose myself again? Am I ready? The truth is, readiness is rarely a feeling. It's a practice. And real love, the kind that honors who you are now, requires a new kind of courage. Not the courage to be perfect, but the courage to be seen. Love after pain is about letting connection happen without abandoning yourself. It's learning to stay rooted even as you open. And to remember that love, when it's real, doesn't need your armor, just your truth. Personal reflection. I used to think healing would make me invincible in relationships, like I'd become so self-aware that nothing could hurt me again. But the opposite happened. I became more tender, more aware of what I needed, more discerning, but also more scared of being hurt in the same old ways. I started noticing my old patterns creeping back, not because I hadn't healed, but because love activates the parts of us that are still a work in progress. The difference now is, I don't abandon myself to stay close to someone else. I speak up sooner. I take space when I need to. I don't sell out my needs for the illusion of harmony. And when I feel myself reaching for old armor, I pause. I breathe. I remind myself that love isn't worth it if I have to disappear to feel safe. Psychological insight. Vulnerability and secure attachment in practice. Researcher Brené Brown defines vulnerability as uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. It's not weakness, it's the birthplace of love, trust, and belonging. In attachment theory, developing a secure attachment means learning to be close without fear of engulfment or abandonment. This often requires repatterning, gradually allowing ourselves to be seen, to ask for what we need, and to believe we're worthy of connection as we are. Vulnerability after trauma is not recklessness. It's a choice made from self-trust, a slow reopening grounded in discernment. Insight prompt. What part of you still hesitates when it comes to love or connection? How do you protect yourself in relationships, even the healthy ones? What would it mean to show up without the old armor, just once? Theory in action prompt. Practice. The vulnerability edge. Think of a conversation you've been avoiding, one where honesty feels risky. Instead of sharing everything, ask yourself, what's 10% more honest than I usually am? Speak just from that edge, not a full leap, just a stretch. Then reflect, how did it feel to share that? Anything shift, even subtly? That's your growing edge. Keep meeting it gently. Integration. Becoming the alchemist theme. Living the wisdom you've earned. Transformation isn't something we watch happen. It's something we choose moment by moment. To live with an alchemist's heart means walking forward with awareness, courage, and softness. You carry your story, but it no longer carries you. Attributes, embodiment, continuity, choice. This closing section brings the episode full circle. We explore what it means to walk through life embodying the wisdom pain has given you, not in performance, but in presence. You've done the work. The next step is integration. The rest is practice. Just be you felt the pain. You've traced its roots, honored its fire, and let it teach you. That's the real alchemy. You don't need to be fully healed to be whole. You don't need to have all the answers to live with meaning. You just need to keep showing up, open, grounded, and honest about where you are. There will still be moments that pull you back into old scripts. There will be relationships that test your boundaries, days when you want to shut down. But now you know the terrain. You've met yourself in the fire, and you've come back with clarity. You're not who you were before the wound. You're something stronger, deeper, and more human. This is the alchemist's way, not escaping pain, but letting it carve a wiser heart. Personal reflection. There was a time I thought healing would look like leaving all the pain behind, that I'd become some version of myself untouched by suffering. But now I see it differently. Healing has made me more human, not less affected, but more connected. I feel things more fully. I pause before reacting. I forgive more easily, but I also walk away faster when something feels misaligned. It's not perfection, it's presence, and it's ongoing. I've learned to let my scars breathe, to tell the truth more often, to stop hiding the parts of me I once thought made me unlovable. And more than anything, I've learned that my pain didn't break me, it introduced me to myself. Insight prompt. What wisdom have you earned through your pain? What would it mean to live as if you already have everything you need to be whole? What new story are you ready to write from this version of you? Theory and action prompt. Practice. The alchemist's pause. Set a timer for 3 minutes. Sit in stillness. Place one hand on your heart, one on your belly. Breathe. Repeat quietly. I have been through the fire. I am still here, and I am enough. When the timer ends, journal one sentence that begins with, "From this place, I choose." Let that sentence guide you into your next chapter. Becoming the alchemist transforming pain doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. It means choosing presence over performance, softness over self-abandonment. It means standing inside your story without shame and letting your scars speak wisdom instead of warning. As you continue this journey of healing and integration, may you grow into your strength without losing your sensitivity. May you learn to feel deeply without drowning, to trust again, not blindly but bravely. May your pain, once silent, become the soil from which your most authentic self can grow. You're not broken, you're becoming. This has been the Unfiltered Human on the Fringe. If this episode stirred something in your grief, clarity, or even resistance, stay with it. Let it move through you. That's where the alchemy begins. Until next time, stay grounded, stay honest, and honor the fire that forged you. James Miller. If you found value in today's episode, you may also be interested in my broader project, The Inversiverse, a series exploring the hidden architecture of perception, identity, control, and consciousness. Across 20 episodes, the Inversiverse dissects indoctrination, language, media manipulation, dark psychology, belief systems, and the evolution of self in the digital age. You can find all episodes of the Inversiverse on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and Substack by searching This Place Called Earth. These ideas aren't shared to convince you, but to invite you to think, feel, and perceive more consciously in a world designed to keep you distracted. Overview of the Inversiverse: a journey through the mirrors of mind, culture, and control. Episodes 1 to 3 introduce foundational ideas around indoctrination, perception, and manipulation. Episode 4 explores how language, symbols, and cultural norms are used to shape thought. Episode 5 investigates control systems, media narratives, and the illusion of choice. Episodes 6 to 7 dives into collective belief structures and the psychology of mass behavior. Episode 8 focuses on marketing, control theory, game theory, and critical thinking. Episode 9 covers love, relationships, human mating, gender dynamics, and red-blue pill ideologies. Episode 10 unpacks dark psychology, the occult, Satanism, and the dark triad personality types. Episode 11 The Simulated Self examines identity, ego, and the rise of post-human consciousness. Episode 12 The Spell of the Mind inquires into language, illusion, and physiology of thought. Episode 13 Conscious Seduction journeys through persuasion, propaganda, and the unseen forces of the mind. Episode 14 The Myth of Sanity sheds light on madness, genius, and the edge of perception. Episode 15 The Algorithmic Mind probes influence, identity, and invisible architects. Episode 16 The Noise of Knowing reveals overload, obsession, and the age of infinite information. Episode 17 Belief Machines delves further into language, desire, and the engine of reality. Episode 18 Submerged Signals examines how the unseen shapes the self. Episode 19 The Alchemy Within Traces, Food, Frequency, and the Forgotten Intelligence of the Body. Episode 20 Encoded Flesh scrutinizes and opens up to the forgotten language of the body, DNA, and biological consciousness.